The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines, but Amelia Carter's husband never came home on their 3rd anniversary. Instead, she stood alone in their penthouse, surrounded by lies and silence, holding proof of a life he would never want. That night, she walked out into the rain and stumbled into a stranger's restaurant, a man whose dark eyes saw every broken piece of her soul. His name was Dante Moretti, and he was the most dangerous man in the city. What she didn't know was that saving her would start a war. Follow this story to the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey reaches. The crystal chandelier above Amelia's head cost more than most people earned in a year, but as she stood beneath it in the silent penthouse, it felt like a noose made of glass and gold. She checked her phone again. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. 7:47 p.m. Marcus was 3 hours late. Their 3rd wedding anniversary dinner, reservations at Le Bernardin, champagne already chilling, her dress a deep emerald that once would have made him stop and stare. All of it waiting for a man who couldn't even bother to send a text. Amelia's fingers trembled as she slipped the phone back into her clutch, brushing against the small plastic stick hidden there. 2 pink lines. She'd stared at them that morning until her vision blurred, hope and terror tangling in her chest like thorns. She was pregnant, and her husband was somewhere else, with someone else, living a life that had stopped including her months ago. The penthouse stretched around her in cold, minimalist perfection, white marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge, furniture chosen by Marcus's decorator because Amelia's taste was too sentimental. She'd stopped arguing after the first year, stopped trying to make this sterile museum feel like home. She crossed to the window, her heels clicking against the stone, and pressed her forehead against the glass. Below, the city pulsed with light and life, couples walking hand in hand through streets glistening with evening rain. She watched them and felt like a ghost, present but not really there, existing in a space no one else could see. Her phone buzzed. Heart leaping, she grabbed it. Running late, don't wait up. 6 words, not even an apology, not even her name. Amelia read the message 3 times, feeling something fundamental crack inside her chest. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't loud, just a quiet, irreversible breaking, like ice giving way beneath careful feet. She'd known, of course. Known for months, maybe longer. The late nights at the office that smelled like perfume instead of paperwork. The business trips that never quite added up. The way Marcus looked through her instead of at her. The way he touched her like an obligation. The way their bed had become a cold, silent ocean between 2 strangers. But knowing and accepting were different things entirely. Her phone buzzed again. Actually, staying in the city tonight. Budget meeting in the morning. The lie was so casual, it almost made her laugh. Budget meetings didn't require overnight stays. Budget meetings didn't leave lipstick on collar points or charge hotel rooms to personal credit cards. Cards Amelia still had access to, statements she'd stopped reading because the truth hurt more than the ignorance. She looked down at her engagement ring, the 3-carat diamond Marcus had chosen without her input, and felt nothing. 3 years ago, she'd thought this rock meant forever. Now it just felt heavy. The pregnancy test pressed against her through the thin fabric of her clutch, like a secret too big to carry alone. She needed to tell him, needed to sit him down and explain that everything was about to change, that they were going to be parents, that maybe, this could be the thing that brought them back to each other. But as she stood in their empty apartment, surrounded by everything money could buy and nothing love could build, Amelia knew the truth. Marcus wouldn't want this baby. He'd want her to handle it, to be reasonable, to understand that a child didn't fit into his 5-year plan any more than her feelings did. The thought made her physically ill. She grabbed her coat, black cashmere, another thing Marcus had bought without asking what she actually liked, and walked out of the penthouse. She didn't leave a note, didn't send a message, just closed the door on 3 years of pretending and stepped into the elevator. The doorman, Robert, looked surprised when she emerged into the lobby. "Mrs. Hale? Do you need me to call the car?" "No." Her voice sounded strange, distant. "I'm walking." "But it's raining." "I know." The October rain hit her the moment she stepped outside, cold and cleansing, soaking through her expensive coat within seconds. Amelia didn't care. She turned left, away from the restaurant reservation she'd never keep, away from the life that had stopped fitting months ago, and walked. Brooklyn at night was a different world from the sterile perfection of Marcus's penthouse. Here, people lived loudly, music spilling from open windows, Arguments and laughter mixing with the sound of rain, the smell of cooking food and wet pavement and possibility. Amelia walked through it all like a sleepwalker, her designer heels splashing through puddles, mascara probably running down her face, the pregnancy test still pressed against her ribs like proof of everything she'd lost and everything she'd found. She didn't have a destination, didn't have a plan, just kept moving, kept breathing, kept existing in a world that suddenly felt too big and too small all at once. After 20 minutes, her feet were screaming and her dress was plastered to her skin. She looked up, trying to orient herself, and realized she'd wandered into a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Brownstones lined the quiet street, trees dripping with rain, a few restaurants glowing warm against the darkness. One caught her eye, Valentino's. The sign was elegant but understated, gold script on black, and through the large windows she could see white tablecloths, candles flickering, the kind of intimate atmosphere that made her chest ache with longing for something she'd never actually had with Marcus. She should keep walking, should go home, change into dry clothes, figure out what came next. Instead, Amelia pushed open the door. Warmth enveloped her immediately, along with the scent of garlic and wine and fresh bread. The restaurant was small, maybe 15 tables, half of them occupied by couples leaning close over their meals. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. Everything was rich, warm, genuine, the opposite of every sterile, trendy place Marcus dragged her to for appearance's sake. Buonasera. The hostess was young, pretty, her smile faltering when she took in Amelia's rain-soaked state. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, Amelia's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "Sophia." The voice came from deeper in the restaurant, masculine and commanding, but somehow gentle. Amelia turned. The man walking toward them was probably in his mid-30s, tall and powerfully built, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that somehow managed to look both elegant and dangerous. His dark hair was swept back, his jaw strong, his eyes the color of espresso. And those eyes were looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Give her the corner table," he said to the hostess, never breaking eye contact with Amelia. "And bring her something warm to drink." "Of course, Mr. Moretti." Amelia should have objected, should have explained she was fine, she was leaving, she'd made a mistake. But there was something about the way this stranger looked at her, not through her, like Marcus did, but at her, seeing her completely, that made her tongue stick to the roof of her mouth. "Come," he said, and it wasn't a command so much as an invitation. "You look like you've had the kind of night that requires excellent wine and no questions." He led her to a corner table, partially hidden by a decorative screen, private and intimate. Amelia sank into the chair like a puppet with cut strings, shivering despite the restaurant's warmth. "I'm Dante," the man said, taking the seat across from her without asking permission. "And you're running from something." It wasn't a question. Amelia's laugh came out bitter and broken. "That obvious?" "Only to someone who's done their share of running." He studied her with those dark, knowing eyes. "Though most people don't do it in Valentino heels, and a dress that costs more than my first car." She looked down at herself, soaked, shivering, probably looking like a drowned socialite, and felt the absurdity of the whole situation crash over her. "I didn't plan this." "The best moments never are planned." A waiter appeared with a thick blanket, draping it around Amelia's shoulders with practiced efficiency, followed by another bringing a steaming cup of something that smelled like honey and lemon and brandy. "Drink," Dante said, "before hypothermia becomes your biggest problem." Amelia wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. The liquid burned going down but settled into her stomach like comfort. "I can't pay for this." "I didn't ask you to. I don't even know you." "That makes us even." Dante leaned back in his chair, completely at ease, like soaked strangers wandered into his restaurant every night. "So, anniversary?" Amelia's hand flew to her ring finger, the diamond catching the candlelight. "How did you keep touching it like it's burning you, and you have that look people get when they realize the life they built isn't the one they wanted." His expression softened slightly. "I'm familiar with that look." Something about his tone, the genuine understanding beneath the words, made Amelia's carefully constructed walls crumble. 3 years today. He didn't show. Then he's a fool. "You don't know me. Maybe I'm not worth showing up for." Dante's eyes hardened. "Don't do that. Don't make his failure your fault." The sharpness in his voice startled her. I just meant, I know what you meant. I also know it's a lie you've probably been telling yourself for months, maybe years, trying to make sense of why someone who's supposed to love you treats you like you're invisible. He paused. How long has he been having the affair? Amelia flinched like he'd slapped her. I haven't. You have, you know. You've known for a while. You just haven't admitted it out loud yet. She wanted to argue, wanted to defend Marcus, defend her marriage, defend the illusion she'd worked so hard to maintain. But sitting across from this stranger in his warm, honest restaurant, wearing a blanket and drinking kindness, she couldn't find the energy to lie anymore. 6 months, she whispered. At least, maybe longer. And you stayed. Where else would I go? Dante's expression shifted into something that might have been anger or might have been pity. Anywhere. Everywhere. You could go literally anywhere except a place that makes you feel like this. Like what? Small, invisible. Like you need permission to exist. Amelia's breath hitched. How did he know? How could a complete stranger see the things she'd barely admitted to herself? That living with Marcus had turned her into a ghost, a decorative piece of furniture, something to be managed and moved and occasionally displayed but never actually seen? I'm pregnant, she heard herself say, and then immediately wanted to stuff the words back into her mouth. She'd told a stranger before telling her own husband. What was wrong with her? But Dante didn't look shocked or uncomfortable. He just nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. Does he know? No? Are you going to tell him? Amelia's hand moved to her stomach, protective and terrified. I don't know. I found out this morning. I was going to tell him tonight at dinner. I thought maybe... Her voice broke. I thought maybe it would change things. It won't. The blunt certainty in his tone made her look up sharply. You don't know that. Yes, Dante said quietly. I do. Men like your husband don't change because of babies or anniversaries or second chances. They change when they lose something they can't get back. And even then, most don't. That's a dark view of the world. It's an honest one. He poured himself a glass of wine from the bottle that had appeared at the table, then offered one to her. When she shook her head, pregnant, can't drink, still trying to process that reality, he set it aside. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I'm not sure I do. I see someone who's been slowly disappearing, someone who's learned to make herself small so she doesn't take up too much space in her own life, someone who apologizes for existing because the people around her have convinced her she's a burden instead of a gift. His eyes held hers, unflinching. And I see someone who's about to make a choice. Amelia's heart hammered. What choice? Whether to keep disappearing until there's nothing left, or to walk away while you still remember who you are. The words hit like a physical blow. Amelia opened her mouth to argue, to defend her marriage, her life, her choices. But her clutch chose that moment to slip from her lap, spilling its contents across the table. Lipstick, credit cards, keys, and the pregnancy test, with its 2 undeniable pink lines. Dante's eyes dropped to it for a fraction of a second, before returning to her face. He didn't comment, didn't judge. Just waited while Amelia scrambled to shove everything back into her bag, her face burning with embarrassment and something deeper, shame at being so completely seen. I should go, she managed, standing too quickly, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Thank you for the drink and the kindness, but I should... Here. Dante stood, pulling a business card from his jacket and holding it out to her. When you're ready to stop being invisible. Amelia stared at the card like it might bite her. Heavy stock, expensive, with just a phone number embossed in gold. No name, no title, just 10 digits and the weight of a choice she wasn't ready to make. I can't. You can. You just haven't decided if you want to. He pressed the card into her hand, his fingers warm against her frozen skin. Call that number when you're ready to fight for yourself instead of a marriage that died a long time ago. Or don't call, but stop pretending you don't have a choice because you do. You've always had one. Amelia clutched the card, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Who are you? Dante smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Someone who knows what it's like to fail the people who needed me most. Someone who won't make that mistake again. Before she could respond, he stepped back, creating distance. Sophia will call you a car. Go home. Think about what you want your life to look like in a year, in 5 years, when your child asks why you stayed with someone who didn't see you. He paused. And then call me. Or don't. But make the choice yourself. Not because of fear, not because of obligation. Because you deserve to exist loudly in your own life. Amelia left the restaurant in a daze, Dante's card burning a hole in her palm, his words echoing in her skull. The car ride back to the penthouse passed in a blur of streetlights and rain. Marcus still wasn't home when she arrived. She stood in the doorway of their bedroom. His bedroom, really. She'd stopped feeling ownership of anything in this apartment months ago and looked at the life she'd built. Designer clothes in the closet, expensive skincare on the bathroom counter, a king-sized bed she slept in alone more nights than not. Evidence of success, proof of arrival, and absolutely none of it felt like hers. Her phone buzzed. Don't wait up tomorrow either. This might take a few days. M. Not even a full sentence. Not even the courtesy of a lie that sounded believable. Amelia looked at the message for a long moment, then at the business card in her other hand, and felt the last piece of her denial shatter. Marcus wasn't coming back. Not tonight, not emotionally, not in any way that mattered. He'd checked out of their marriage so long ago she couldn't even remember when they'd last had a real conversation, when he'd last looked at her like she was something other than an inconvenience. And she was pregnant with his child. The thought made her laugh, a sharp, broken sound that echoed in the empty penthouse. 3 years of trying to be the perfect wife, of shrinking herself down, of accepting crumbs and calling it love. And this was what she had to show for it. A cheating husband, an empty apartment, and a baby that would tie her to this misery forever. Unless. Her fingers tightened around Dante's card. When you're ready to stop being invisible. Was she ready? Could she be? Amelia walked to the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Her makeup had run, her hair was a disaster, her dress was ruined. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd lost herself so completely she didn't recognize her own reflection. But beneath the smeared mascara and the rain-soaked silk, she saw something else. A flicker of the girl she used to be, before Marcus, before the slow erosion of self-worth, before she'd learned to apologize for taking up space. That girl wouldn't have accepted this. That girl would have fought. Her phone buzzed again. Also, we need to talk when I get back. About us. About the future. M. The words were vague, careful, the kind of thing people said when they wanted to end something but didn't have the courage to be direct. Amelia read them and felt absolutely nothing. No fear, no heartbreak, just a vast, echoing emptiness where love used to live. She thought about the baby growing inside her, thought about raising a child in this cold, loveless apartment, teaching them that this was what family looked like. Thought about her son or daughter watching her shrink and disappear, learning that self-erasure was the price of love. No. The word crystallized in her mind, sharp and clear. No, she wouldn't do it. Wouldn't raise her child in the shadow of Marcus's indifference. Wouldn't teach them that being invisible was safer than being seen. Amelia picked up her phone and dialed the number on Dante's card before she could talk herself out of it. It rang twice. I was wondering how long you'd wait. Dante's voice was calm, unsurprised, like he'd been expecting her call. He's not coming back, Amelia said, and was surprised by how steady she sounded. Not just tonight, not ever, not in any way that matters. No, he's not. He wants to talk about our future when he gets back, which means he wants to end it but is too much of a coward to do it over text. Probably. And I'm pregnant with a baby he's never going to want. Dante was quiet for a moment. What do you need? The question surprised her. Not what are you going to do or have you thought this through, but simply, what do you need? I don't know, Amelia admitted. I don't even know what I'm allowed to need anymore. Everything. You're allowed to need everything. His tone shifted, became more businesslike. Pack a bag. Essentials only. I'm sending a car. I can't just, yes you can. You can absolutely leave a man who treats you like you're disposable. You can take the baby he doesn't deserve and build a life that doesn't require you to disappear. He paused. Or you can stay. Wait for him to come home and have his careful conversation about the future while your future is growing inside you. Your choice. But make it now. Amelia looked around the penthouse one more time, at the life she'd thought she wanted, at the cage she'd built from expectations and fear. Send the car, she heard herself say. 20 minutes. Pack light. We'll get you anything else you need. Dante? Yeah? Why are you doing this? You don't know me. His laugh was soft, almost sad. Let's just say I know what it's like to fail someone when it mattered. and I'm not doing that again." He hung up before she could ask what he meant. Amelia moved through the apartment like a ghost, packing a single suitcase with clothes, documents, her laptop, the few personal items that still felt like hers. Everything else, the designer furniture, the expensive art, the crystal and marble and gold, she left behind without a second glance. It had never been hers anyway. 18 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Black Mercedes. Downstairs. Amelia took one last look at the penthouse, at 3 years of trying to be someone she wasn't, and felt nothing but relief. The driver was professional, silent, opening her door and taking her suitcase without comment. As they pulled away from the building, Amelia watched her old life disappear in the rear window and felt something unfamiliar unfurl in her chest. Hope. She didn't know where they were going, didn't know what came next, didn't know if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or the bravest choice. But for the first time in 3 years, Amelia Carter felt like she was actually living instead of just existing. And that, she decided, was enough. The car drove through the rain-slicked streets of Brooklyn, leaving the city behind, heading towards something unknown. Amelia pressed her hand against her stomach, against the tiny life growing there, and made a promise. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay." Behind her, Manhattan glittered against the night sky, indifferent and beautiful. Ahead, the road stretched dark and uncertain. And somewhere between the past she was leaving and the future she couldn't see, Amelia finally felt like herself. The rain had stopped by the time the Mercedes turned off the highway, but the world outside remained dark and unfamiliar. Amelia watched the landscape change through her window, city lights giving way to suburbs, then to long stretches of wooded road where houses sat far back from the street, hidden behind gates and old-growth trees. Wealth out here didn't announce itself with glass and steel. It whispered through stone walls and private drives, through the kind of security that made Manhattan penthouses look quaint. The car slowed at a gate that appeared almost organically from the darkness, wrought iron twisted into patterns that might have been vines or might have been something more deliberate. The driver pressed a button on the dash, and the gate swung open silently, revealing a driveway that curved through manicured grounds lit by subtle landscape lighting. Amelia's breath caught when the house came into view. It wasn't what she'd expected. Not a cold modern mansion like Marcus's taste would have demanded, but something older, more substantial. Stone and timber, 3 stories of old-world elegance that managed to feel both imposing and somehow welcoming. Warm light glowed from windows on the ground floor. Somewhere in the distance she could hear water, a fountain maybe, or a stream. The car stopped at the entrance, where wide stone steps led up to massive wooden doors. Before Amelia could move, one of those doors opened and Dante emerged, still in his dark suit, but somehow looking more relaxed than he had in the restaurant, like he'd shed some layer of formality the moment he crossed his own threshold. "Welcome," he said simply, opening her car door himself while the driver retrieved her suitcase. "How are you holding up?" Amelia stepped out onto the drive, her legs unsteady. "I'm not sure yet. Ask me when the adrenaline wears off." "Fair enough." He gestured toward the entrance. "Come inside. You look like you could use something stronger than honey and brandy." The interior of the house matched the exterior. Old wood and stone, thick rugs over hardwood floors, furniture that looked like it had been chosen for comfort rather than appearance. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace in what appeared to be a library, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with actual books, not the designer spines Marcus had bought by the yard. "It's beautiful," Amelia said, and meant it. "It's home." Dante led her to a leather sofa near the fire, then moved to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of what looked like whiskey. He handed her one, then seemed to remember. "Right, the baby. Sorry." "It's okay. I'm still getting used to that reality myself." Amelia set the glass aside untouched, curling into the corner of the sofa and pulling her damp coat tighter around her shoulders. "Dante, I need to understand what's happening. Who are you? Why are you helping me? And what exactly did I just agree to by calling you?" He settled into the chair across from her, his expression thoughtful. "Fair questions. Which one do you want answered first?" "All of them. Starting with why a restaurant owner has a house that looks like it belongs in a Mafia movie and sends Mercedes with professional drivers to pick up strangers in the middle of the night." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You're more observant than you give yourself credit for." "That's not an answer." "No, it's not." Dante took a sip of his whiskey, considering her. "The restaurant is real. I do own it, But it's not my primary occupation. What is? I handle problems for people, provide protection, security, resolution for situations that fall outside conventional channels. He held her gaze steadily. Some people call it organized crime. I prefer to think of it as providing services the legitimate world won't touch. Amelia should have been terrified, should have grabbed her suitcase and demanded he take her back to the city immediately. But after 3 years of Marcus's careful lies and corporate doublespeak, there was something almost refreshing about Dante's blunt honesty. "So you're a criminal," she said. "By some definitions, yes. And you brought me to your home because I saw someone who needed help, and I had the means to provide it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "And because 5 years ago, I failed someone in a situation very similar to yours. I'm not making that mistake again." The pain in his voice was real, unmistakable. Amelia found herself leaning forward too. "What happened?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, staring into his glass. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Her name was Isabella. We were going to be married, but her family, old money, legitimate business, the kind of people who think someone like me is beneath contempt. They didn't approve. When she got pregnant, they gave her an ultimatum, the baby or them. Her inheritance, her family, everything she'd ever known." He paused. "She chose them, ended the pregnancy, married someone they approved of within 6 months." "I'm sorry," Amelia said softly. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand why I made the offer I did." His dark eyes met hers. "I should have fought harder. Should have protected her, given her options, made her see that their approval wasn't worth more than her own happiness or the life we'd created. Instead, I let her make the choice alone, and she chose the cage she knew over the freedom she was afraid of. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I had resources, power, the ability to give her a different life, but I was too focused on playing by rules that were rigged against us from the start." He set his glass down with deliberate care. "So when I saw you tonight, pregnant, alone, clinging to a marriage that's already over, I saw a second chance. Maybe not for me, but for you, for that baby. A chance to choose differently than Isabella did." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're stronger than you think. I know you walked away from comfort and security because you finally saw them for what they were, a very expensive prison. And I know that baby deserves better than a father who can't even show up for an anniversary dinner. Marcus doesn't know yet about the baby. Are you going to tell him?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks he has a right to know. But another part..." She pressed her hand to her stomach. "Another part is terrified he'll try to take this choice away from me too, that he'll pressure me to end it, or worse, that he'll suddenly pretend to care just to control the narrative." "What do you want?" Dante asked. "Not what Marcus wants, not what you think you should want. What do you actually want for yourself and your child?" The question was so simple and so impossible. Amelia had spent 3 years not asking herself what she wanted, training herself to prioritize Marcus's needs, Marcus's image, Marcus's comfort. The muscle for self-determination had atrophied. "I want this baby," she said finally, the words feeling both terrifying and right. "I want to keep it and raise it and give it a life that doesn't require shrinking itself to fit someone else's expectations." "Then that's what we'll make happen." "It's not that simple. Marcus has lawyers, resources. So do I." Dante's expression hardened. "And mine are significantly less concerned with legal niceties." A chill ran down Amelia's spine, but it wasn't entirely fear. "I'm not asking you to hurt anyone. I'm not offering to. I'm offering protection, resources, and the kind of leverage that makes men like your husband reconsider their options." He stood, moving to the window where the ground stretched dark and secure beyond the glass. "But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. If you stay here, if you accept my help, you're entering a world that operates by different rules. There will be consequences. For you, for Marcus, for everyone involved." "What kind of consequences?" "That depends on what Marcus does when he realizes you're gone. If he's smart, he'll accept the divorce quietly and move on with his life. If he's not..." Dante turned back to face her. "Then we handle it differently." Amelia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her stomach dropping when she saw Marcus's name. "Where are you?" "Building security says you left. Call me." "He knows I'm gone," she said, her voice shaking. "Good. Let him know. Let him feel what it's like to lose something he took for granted." Dante crossed back to her, taking the phone gently from her hands and setting it on the table. You don't have to answer him tonight. You don't have to answer him at all if you don't want to. He'll come looking for me. Let him. He won't find you here. The certainty in Dante's voice should have been arrogant, but somehow it just sounded like fact. Amelia looked around the library, at the warm fire and comfortable furniture, at this stranger who'd offered her sanctuary without asking for anything in return, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Safe. Why are you really doing this? She asked. And don't say it's just about Isabella. There has to be more to it. But Dante smiled, but it was sad. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people get crushed by bad systems. Maybe I want to prove that power can be used for something other than control and profit. Or maybe, he paused, maybe I just saw someone who needed help and realized I was in a position to give it. Does there need to be more reason than that? In my experience, people don't help without wanting something in return. Then your experience has been with the wrong people. He gestured towards the hallway. Come on, I'll show you to your room. You look like you're about to fall over. He wasn't wrong. The adrenaline that had carried Amelia through the evening was fading fast, replaced by exhaustion so complete it felt like gravity had doubled. She followed Dante up a wide staircase, past family portraits that suggested this house had history, to a second-floor hallway lined with doors. This one's yours, Dante said, opening a door near the end of the hall. Bathroom's through there, closet's empty, but we can get you whatever you need tomorrow. There's a lock on the inside of the door. Use it if it makes you feel safer. The room was spacious, but not ostentatious, decorated in soft blues and creams, with a four-poster bed that looked like it could swallow her whole. Through another door, she could see a marble bathroom with a deep soaking tub. It's perfect, Amelia said. Thank you. Get some rest. We'll figure everything else out in the morning. Dante turned to leave, then paused. Amelia, you made the right choice tonight. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you did. After he left, Amelia locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, her phone clutched in her hands. It had buzzed 3 more times with messages from Marcus, each one slightly more insistent than the last. This isn't funny. Where are you? Amelia, answer your phone. If this is about tonight, we can talk about it like adults. She almost laughed at that last one. Adults. Like Marcus had been acting like an adult when he missed their anniversary for another woman. Like their entire marriage hadn't been built on him making unilateral decisions and her accepting them. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. She should tell him something, should explain, should... No. Amelia turned off her phone and set it on the nightstand. Marcus could wonder, could worry, could feel for one night what she'd felt for months, alone, uncertain, invisible. She stripped off her damp clothes and stood under a hot shower until her skin turned pink and her muscles unclenched. When she finally climbed into bed, the sheets were soft and clean, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Amelia Carter fell asleep without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on her chest. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a moment of pure panic before memory returned. Dante's house. Safety. Choice. Her phone showed 23 missed calls and a dozen messages, all from Marcus. She scrolled through them without reading, noting how the tone shifted from confusion to anger to something that might have been actual concern but was probably just frustration at losing control. A soft knock interrupted her analysis. Come in, she called, expecting Dante. Instead, a woman in her 50s entered, carrying a tray that smelled like coffee and fresh bread. Good morning, Mrs. Carter. I'm Elena. Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you breakfast and see if you needed anything. Oh, you don't have to... Amelia started, but Elena was already setting the tray on the bedside table with the efficiency of long practice. Toast, eggs, fruit, and ginger tea instead of coffee. Mr. Moretti mentioned your condition. Elena's smile was warm and knowing. My own daughter just had her second. Ginger tea saved her life in the first trimester. Thank you, Amelia said, surprised by the thoughtfulness. Is Dante Mr. Moretti? Is he here? In his office, handling some business. He said to tell you there's no rush, but when you're ready, he'd like to speak with you about next steps. Elena moved toward the door, then paused. He's a good man, you know. Not always a gentleman, but a good one. You're safe here. After Elena left, Amelia ate slowly, trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken. 24 hours ago, she'd been waiting in a penthouse for a husband who didn't love her. Now she was eating breakfast in a mobster's guest room, pregnant and on the run, and somehow feeling more herself than she had in years. She dressed in clean clothes from her suitcase, jeans and a soft sweater, things Marcus would have called too casual, and made her way downstairs following the sound of voices to what appeared to be an office. Dante sat behind a massive desk, talking on the phone in rapid Italian. When he saw her in the doorway, he held up one finger, wait, and finished his conversation. Sì, capisco. Gestiscilo. Chiamami se ci sono problemi. He hung up and smiled. Good morning. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months, actually. Amelia moved into the room, taking in the maps on the walls, the computer screen showing what looked like security feeds, the casual evidence of a life far removed from legal business. Is this a bad time? For you, never. He gestured to a chair. Sit. We need to talk about your husband. Amelia's stomach clenched. What about him? He filed a missing persons report this morning. Very dramatic, very public. Called your parents, your friends, his office. Painted quite the picture of a distraught husband whose wife vanished without a trace. He's covering his tracks, Amelia said quietly, making sure that if I come back and say anything about the affair or the marriage, he can paint me as unstable. Smart. Dante's expression was grim. Also predictable. Men like Marcus always control the narrative. So what do I do? You beat him to it. You file for divorce today, cite irreconcilable differences, and make it clear you left of your own free will. He slid a folder across the desk. I took the liberty of having my lawyer draw up preliminary papers. You don't have to use them, but time matters here. Amelia opened the folder with shaking hands. The documents were thorough, professional, terrifyingly real. This is moving so fast. It has to. Every hour you wait is another hour Marcus builds his version of events. But Dante's tone gentled. I'm not trying to pressure you. If you want to go back, talk to him, try to work things out. No. The word came out sharp and certain. No, I don't want that. I need to understand what I'm walking into. A fight. Marcus won't let you go quietly, not when there's money and reputation at stake. He'll use lawyers, investigators, probably try to paint you as an unfit mother. Dante paused. But here's what he doesn't know. I've already started looking into his business dealings, and your husband has been very, very careless. Something in his tone made Amelia look up sharply. What did you find? Evidence that suggests Marcus and his father have been engaged in some creative accounting, money moving through shell companies, investments that don't quite add up, transactions that smell like money laundering. Dante's smile was cold. Nothing proven yet, but enough to make things very uncomfortable if the right people started asking questions. You're going to blackmail him. I'm going to provide you with leverage. What you do with it is your choice. Amelia stared at the divorce papers, her mind racing. If I do this, if I file and fight and use whatever you found, Marcus will come after me with everything he has. Yes. He'll try to destroy me, my reputation, my credibility, everything. Probably. And you think you can protect me from that? Dante's expression hardened. I don't think. I know. Marcus Hale is a small man playing at power in a world he doesn't understand. He's used to winning because he's never faced real opposition. But I've been dealing with men far more dangerous than him since before he learned to tie a tie. He leaned forward. I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm saying you won't face it alone. A phone buzzed. Amelia's, still in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw Marcus's name again. I know you're upset. I know I screwed up. Please, just come home so we can talk. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. She showed the message to Dante, who read it with disgust. Too little, too late. And notice he's not apologizing for the affair, just for screwing up like he forgot to pick up milk. Should I respond? Only if you want to. But if you do, be clear and final. Don't give him hope that you're coming back because that just prolongs the fight. Amelia's fingers moved over the keyboard, deleting and retyping, searching for words that were true and strong and hers. I'm not coming back. I've been unhappy for a long time, and I think you have too. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Don't contact me again. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Marcus's response came within seconds. What lawyer? Amelia, don't do something stupid. Think about what you're throwing away. Dante read over her shoulder and laughed, but there was no humor in it. What you're throwing away, not what you're gaining, not what you deserve, just what he's losing. He's going to fight this, Amelia said, her hands shaking. Let him. You've got something he doesn't. What's that? The truth. And me. Dante stood, walking around the desk to face her. Sign the papers. Let my lawyer file them today. And then we start building your new life. One where you don't have to ask permission to exist. Amelia looked at the divorce papers again, at the line waiting for her signature. 3 years of marriage ending with a pen stroke. It should have felt monumental, devastating, impossible. Instead, it felt like release. She signed her name in clear, steady letters. Good, Dante said quietly. Now the real work begins. Over the next 2 days, Amelia learned what it meant to have Dante Moretti's resources behind her. Lawyers appeared and disappeared, building an airtight case for divorce and preparing defenses for every attack Marcus might launch. A doctor, discreet, professional, highly recommended, came to the house to confirm her pregnancy and establish prenatal care. New clothes appeared in her closet, toiletries in her bathroom, everything she might need without having to ask. And through it all, Dante was there. Not hovering, not controlling, just present. They ate meals together, talking about everything and nothing. She learned he'd inherited his father's business at 25 and spent the next decade consolidating power and eliminating rivals who thought youth meant weakness. He learned she'd wanted to be a teacher before Marcus convinced her that finance was more practical, more profitable, more worthy of her intelligence. You could still teach, Dante said one evening over dinner, with a criminal record for associating with known felons? Amelia smiled, but it was bitter. Marcus will make sure everyone knows where I've been staying. Then teach adults. Tutor kids whose parents don't care about credentials, or don't teach at all. You have options, Amelia. You've always had options. Marcus just made you forget that. On the third day, Marcus's lawyer contacted hers with a counteroffer that made her blood boil. He wanted the divorce, apparently, probably eager to marry his mistress without the messiness of abandonment, but on his terms. Minimal spousal support, no claim to his assets, and most importantly, a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from discussing their marriage publicly. He's trying to buy your silence, Dante said, reading the proposal with cold fury. Wants to make sure you can't tell anyone why the marriage ended. What should I do? Reject it. Make a counteroffer that's fair. You were married 3 years. You're entitled to something, but include a clause about the baby. Amelia's hand moved to her stomach. What kind of clause? Sole custody, no visitation rights unless you agree, no claim to the child unless he acknowledges paternity willingly and agrees to actual co-parenting responsibilities. Dante's eyes were hard. Make him choose between walking away clean or being a father. My guess is he'll choose clean. That's cold. That's protection. Would you rather share custody with a man who didn't want the baby in the first place, subject your child to weekends with a father who sees them as an obligation? He was right, and Amelia hated that he was right. But she also knew Marcus well enough to know that fatherhood held no appeal for him. Children were messy, demanding, image-disrupting. He'd choose freedom over responsibility every time. Her lawyer sent the counteroffer that afternoon. Marcus's response came within an hour, and it wasn't through lawyers. He showed up at the gate. Amelia was in the library when Elena appeared, looking worried. Mrs. Carter, your husband is at the entrance. He's demanding to see you. Every muscle in Amelia's body went rigid. How did he find me? He didn't. He's been driving around checking properties owned by people he thinks you might know. Got lucky, I suppose. Elena's expression was grim. Mr. Moretti is handling it. Amelia followed Elena to Dante's office, where multiple security screens showed Marcus's BMW stopped at the gate. Marcus himself standing outside the car, shouting at the intercom. Rights as her husband. You can't keep her prisoner. Amelia, if you can hear me, I'm not leaving until we talk. Dante stood at his desk, arms crossed, watching the screens with the patient attention of a predator sizing up prey. He's been there for 10 minutes. Very dramatic, very ineffective. He's not going to leave, Amelia said quietly. No, probably not. Men like Marcus don't understand boundaries until they're enforced. Dante turned to her. Your call. I can have my people remove him, which will escalate things. Or you can talk to him here, on camera, with me present. Closure on your terms. Amelia's first instinct was to hide, to let Dante handle it, to avoid the confrontation. But that was the old Amelia talking, the one who'd spent 3 years avoiding conflict to keep Marcus happy. The new Amelia, the one who'd signed divorce papers and chosen her child over comfort, needed to face him. I'll talk to him. But here, inside your property, where I'm safe. Dante smiled and there was approval in it. Good, I'll have him brought to the house. But Amelia, don't let him manipulate you. He's going to try. It's what men like him do when they're losing control. Marcus arrived 15 minutes later, escorted by two of Dante's security team who looked like they could break him in half without breaking a sweat. He was disheveled, his usually perfect hair mussed, his shirt wrinkled, eyes wild with an emotion Amelia couldn't quite identify. When he saw her standing in Dante's foyer, something like relief crossed his face. "Thank God," Marcus breathed. "Amelia, what the hell is going on? You disappear. You send divorce papers. You're living with some—" His eyes landed on Dante, who stood slightly behind and to the left of Amelia, a silent presence. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who helps people your wife when they need it," Dante said calmly. "And you're in my home, so I'd suggest you watch your tone." Marcus's face flushed. "This is insane. Amelia, come home. Whatever I did, whatever you think I did, we can work it out." "You missed our anniversary to be with another woman," Amelia said, and was proud of how steady her voice was. "You've been having an affair for at least 6 months, probably longer. You've made me feel invisible in my own marriage. And when I tried to tell you I was pregnant, you're what?" Marcus's face went white. "Pregnant. 3 months. I was going to tell you on our anniversary, but you weren't there." She watched him process this, saw the calculations happening behind his eyes, and felt nothing but cold clarity. "But it doesn't matter now. I'm filing for divorce. I don't want your money. I don't want your name. And I don't want you in my life or my child's life unless you're willing to actually be a father, which we both know you're not. That's not— you can't just—" Marcus's composure was cracking. "Amelia, be reasonable. You're pregnant and emotional and clearly not thinking straight. Come home. Let's talk about this like adults." "I am being an adult. For the first time in our entire marriage, I'm making a choice based on what I want instead of what you want." "What you want? You want to live with this criminal? You want to raise our child around mob enforcers and illegal business?" Marcus's voice rose. "I'll fight for custody. I'll prove you're unfit. I'll make sure you never see a penny of my money or a moment with that baby." Dante moved then, stepping forward just enough to make his presence felt. "You're done talking now." "Stay out of this," Marcus snapped. "This is between me and my wife." "Your soon-to-be ex-wife. And you're in my home, threatening a woman under my protection." Dante's voice was soft but carried an edge that made even Amelia's breath catch. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to accept the divorce terms Amelia offers. And you're going to disappear from her life unless she chooses to include you. Because if you don't, if you fight her, threaten her, or try to hurt her in any way, I'll make sure certain financial irregularities in your company become very interesting to federal investigators." Marcus's face went from red to ashen. "You're blackmailing me." "I'm providing context. What you do with that information is your choice." Dante smiled, and it was terrifying. "But I'd choose carefully. Amelia's offering you a clean exit. Take it." For a long moment, Marcus just stared at both of them, and Amelia could see the exact second he realized he'd lost. His shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. "You'll regret this," he said to Amelia, but it sounded hollow. "You're throwing away everything for what? A fantasy?" "For myself," Amelia said quietly. "For my child. For a life where I don't have to disappear to make you comfortable." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but Dante's security team was still standing in the doorway, and the mathematics of the situation were clear. He was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll sign your papers, but don't come crawling back when reality sets in." He left without another word, escorted out by security, who made sure he got in his car and drove away. Amelia watched through the window until his BMW disappeared down the drive, and only then did she realize she was shaking. "You did well," Dante said softly. "That took courage." "I don't feel very courageous." "Courage isn't not being afraid. It's being terrified and doing the thing anyway." He guided her back to the library, poured her water, waited while she collected herself. "He's going to sign the papers." Men like Marcus always fold when they realize the cost of fighting is higher than the cost of walking away. "What if he doesn't?" "Then we move to plan B." "Which is?" "You let me worry about that." Dante's expression softened. "For now, just breathe. The hard part's over. Everything else is just paperwork." But as Amelia sat in Dante's library, her hand pressed against the barely there swell of her stomach where her child grew, she knew the hard part was just beginning. She'd left one life, but hadn't yet built another. She was pregnant, alone except for the protection of a man she barely knew, facing an uncertain future with nothing but hope and determination. 3 days later, Marcus's lawyer confirmed he'd accepted the divorce terms. 2 weeks after that, the papers were filed and the marriage was legally over. Amelia Carter was free, and absolutely terrified of what came next. Freedom, Amelia discovered, was harder than captivity. At least in her marriage to Marcus, she'd known the rules, understood the boundaries, could navigate the careful choreography of being invisible. Now, standing in Dante's guest room 3 weeks after signing divorce papers, she had no script, no map, no clear sense of what came next. She was 4 months pregnant, legally single, living in a mobster's estate, and had just received an email from her mother that made her stomach turn. "Amelia, whatever you think you're doing, stop. Marcus's mother called me yesterday. She's devastated. Do you have any idea what kind of scandal this is causing? People are asking questions. Your father's colleagues are gossiping. You need to come home, apologize, and fix this before you destroy both families' reputations. This is not who we raised you to be, not who they raised her to be. The daughter who followed rules, married well, made everyone proud. The perfect daughter who never questioned, never challenged, never chose herself over appearances." Amelia deleted the email without responding, then blocked her mother's number before she could second-guess the decision. "You look like you could murder someone." She turned to find Dante leaning in her doorway, dressed casually in dark jeans and a white shirt, looking nothing like the dangerous man who'd threatened her husband with federal investigations and everything like someone who belonged in an expensive cologne ad. "My mother thinks I should apologize to Marcus and his family for the scandal of divorcing him." Amelia laughed, but it came out bitter. "Not for the affair, mind you, for making it public by leaving." Dante's expression darkened. "Your family knows he was cheating? They don't care. Infidelity is forgivable if you're discreet about it. Divorce is not." She tossed her phone onto the bed. "I just blocked her number. Is that awful? Am I an awful person?" "You're someone setting boundaries with people who've never respected them. That's not awful, that's healthy." He moved into the room, keeping a respectful distance. "Though I'm guessing it doesn't feel healthy right now. It feels lonely." The admission surprised her. She'd been alone in her marriage for months, isolated by Marcus's indifference and her own shame. But that had been a different kind of loneliness, the ache of being surrounded by people and still unseen. This was sharper, more immediate. The severing of connections she'd taken for granted, even when those connections were toxic. "You're not alone," Dante said quietly. "You're here. You're safe. And you're building something new, even if you can't see the shape of it yet. What if I'm making a massive mistake? What if 6 months from now I'm a single mother with no family, no support, no idea how to survive outside the life I left? Then you'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think, Amelia." He paused. "But you won't be alone in the figuring out part. I meant what I said. You're under my protection. That doesn't expire when the divorce papers are finalized." There was something in his voice, an intensity that made her look at him more closely. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd learned to read Dante's moods, the careful neutrality when he was handling business, the dry humor when he was relaxed, the cold fury when someone threatened something he protected. But this was different. This felt personal. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care so much about what happens to me?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, and Amelia thought he might deflect the question like he had before. But then he crossed to the window, looking out over the grounds. "Because you remind me of Isabella," he said finally. "Not in looks or personality, but in situation. Pregnant, pressured, caught between what you want and what everyone else expects of you. And because I failed her, let her make the choice alone. Let her family convince her that ending the pregnancy was the only option. Let her walk away from me because I didn't fight hard enough to show her there was another path." He turned back to face her. "I can't undo that. Can't go back and be the man she needed me to be. But I can be that man for you. Can make sure you know you have options, support, protection. Everything I should have given her." The raw honesty in his voice made Amelia's throat tight. "I'm not your second chance at saving her. No, you're not. You're your own person, fighting your own battle. But maybe helping you helps me live with my regrets a little easier." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Is that selfish?" "It's human." Amelia moved closer to the window, standing beside him. "What happened to her? To Isabella?" "She married the man her family chose, had 2 children, lives in Connecticut in a house that costs more than most people make in a lifetime." His jaw tightened. "And she's miserable. I see it every time her picture appears in the society pages, every time her name comes up in business circles. She made the safe choice, and it's killing her slowly. Do you still love her? I love who she was, who she could have been if she'd been brave enough to choose herself. He looked at Amelia then, his dark eyes intense. But no, I'm not in love with her anymore. That died when she chose fear over possibility. Before Amelia could respond, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Mrs. Hale? This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Financial Crimes Division. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your husband's business dealings. Amelia's blood went cold. My ex-husband. The divorce was finalized last week. Right, my apologies. Ms. Carter, then, are you available to come in for a conversation? It's regarding some irregularities we've discovered in the accounting practices at Hale and Associates. She looked at Dante, who'd gone very still. What kind of irregularities? I'd prefer to discuss that in person. This is a voluntary interview at this stage, but your cooperation would be appreciated. Detective Chen's tone was professional but firm. Would tomorrow at 2 work for you? Yes. I'll be there. After she hung up, the silence in the room was deafening. They're investigating Marcus, Amelia said, her voice shaking. The Financial Crimes Unit. They want to talk to me. Dante's expression was unreadable. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That I didn't know anything about his business, that we barely spoke about his work, that I signed tax returns without reading them because he said it was handled. She looked at him sharply. Is this because of what you found? Did you tip them off? No, but I'm not surprised they're looking. Men like Marcus get careless when they think they're untouchable. Eventually, someone notices. He moved toward the door. I'll have my lawyer meet you there tomorrow. Don't go alone. Dante, if they think I was involved, you weren't, and they'll figure that out quickly enough. You're not the target, Amelia. You're just collateral damage in whatever mess Marcus created. But as Amelia prepared for the interview the next day, she couldn't shake the feeling that her escape from Marcus was about to get significantly more complicated. Detective Chen turned out to be a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat across from Amelia in a sterile interview room, a recorder between them, and got straight to the point. How much did you know about your ex-husband's business practices? Almost nothing, Amelia said honestly. Marcus didn't discuss work with me. Said I wouldn't understand the complexity of investment banking. Did you ever sign documents on his behalf? Tax returns, financial statements, loan applications? Tax returns, yes. He'd have me sign them during dinner or while I was getting ready for events. I asked once if I should review them first, and he said it was unnecessary, that his accountant handled everything. Detective Chen made a note. And you trusted him? The question hit harder than it should have. I did. That was my mistake. Ms. Carter, we have evidence suggesting that Hale and Associates has been moving money through shell companies, falsifying investment returns, and potentially laundering funds for clients engaged in illegal activities. Chen leaned forward. Your name appears on several documents, not as a signatory, but as a beneficiary on accounts we believe were used to hide assets. Amelia felt like the floor had dropped away. I don't have any accounts except the joint checking Marcus and I shared, and a small savings account from before we married. These are offshore accounts, the Caymans specifically, established in your name approximately 18 months ago. That's impossible. I never signed anything, never even knew those accounts existed. We believe your husband opened them using your personal information. Essentially, he was using your identity without your knowledge or consent. Chen's expression softened slightly. You're not under investigation, Ms. Carter, but we need your cooperation to build our case against your ex-husband and his father. Dante's lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel Torres, spoke up for the first time. What exactly are you asking my client to do? Testify. Provide any documentation she has access to. Help us understand the family dynamics that might explain why Marcus Hale thought he could get away with this. Amelia's mind was racing. Offshore accounts in her name, money laundering, federal crimes. If I testify, what happens to me? Nothing. You're a witness, potentially a victim of identity theft. We can offer protection if you're concerned about retaliation. She already has protection, Rachel said smoothly. But we'll need full disclosure of what you have and what you're planning before Ms. Carter agrees to anything. The interview lasted another hour, during which Detective Chen laid out a case that made Amelia physically ill. Marcus and his father had been running a sophisticated money laundering operation for at least 3 years, hiding money for clients who ranged from white-collar criminals to organizations with ties to international crime syndicates. They'd use shell companies, fake investments, and carefully crafted paper trails to move hundreds of millions of dollars. And they'd put Amelia's name on some of it, creating a shield of deniability if anyone started asking questions. "He was setting me up," Amelia said numbly in the car ride back to Dante's estate. "If this all came out while we were still married, he could have claimed I was the one running the accounts, that I was the criminal and he was just the naive husband." "Probably," Rachel agreed. "But you left before he could use you. The timeline works in your favor. You filed for divorce before the investigation went public. That suggests you didn't know about any of this." "I feel so stupid. How did I not know? How did I live with him for 3 years and not see who he really was?" Dante, who'd been silent in the front seat, finally spoke. "Because you trusted him. Because you believed people meant what they said. That's not stupidity, Amelia. That's being a decent human being." When they arrived back at the estate, Amelia went straight to her room, needing space to process. But an hour later, Elena knocked with news that made everything worse. "Miss Carter, there's a problem. Your old apartment, the one you shared with Mr. Hale, it's been raided by federal agents. They're seizing everything, and they're looking for you." Amelia's stomach dropped. "Looking for me how? They went to your parents' house, your father's office. They're asking questions about your whereabouts, your involvement in Marcus's business." Elena's expression was worried. "Mr. Moretti thinks you should stay here, lay low until this calms down." But it didn't calm down. Over the next week, the story exploded across every news outlet. Marcus Hale and his father arrested for fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Assets frozen, clients fleeing, the entire Hale empire collapsing overnight. And in every article, every news segment, Amelia's name appeared, sometimes as a potential witness, sometimes as a person of interest, always with the implication that she'd known more than she claimed. Her phone, which she'd turned back on to monitor the situation, was flooded with messages from reporters, old friends suddenly interested in her story, strangers offering to buy her exclusive interview. She turned it off again and stopped reading the news. "They're going to destroy me," she said to Dante one night over dinner, her appetite gone despite Elena's excellent cooking. "Even if I'm cleared, even if I testify and help them build their case, everyone will always wonder if I knew, if I was complicit. Let them wonder. You know the truth. That doesn't matter. Perception becomes reality. I'll never be able to work in finance again, never be able to use my degree, never—" Her voice broke. "I'm going to be a single mother with no career, no family support, living off the charity of a man I barely know. This is insane." Dante set down his fork with deliberate care. "First, you're not living off charity. You're under my protection, which is different. Second, you have skills, intelligence, and determination. Those don't disappear because your ex-husband is a criminal. And third," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "you're not alone in this. You keep saying that like it's some inevitable truth. But it's not. You have me. You have Elena, Rachel, the people in this house who've watched you fight for yourself these past weeks and respect the hell out of you for it." "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why do you all care? I'm nobody. Just some woman who made bad choices and got lucky enough to stumble into your restaurant." "You're not nobody. And you didn't get lucky. You got brave. You made a choice to save yourself when it would have been easier to stay in a comfortable cage." Dante stood, moving around the table to crouch beside her chair. "Amelia, I've seen a lot of people in my life. Criminals, victims, people in between. And the ones who survive, who actually build something worth having, are the ones who choose themselves even when it's terrifying. That's what you did. That's why people care." She looked down at him, this powerful, dangerous man kneeling beside her chair, and felt something shift in her chest. It wasn't love. Not yet. Too soon for that. Too complicated. But it was something. Trust, maybe. Or possibility. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. But don't let it paralyze you." He stood, offering his hand. "Come on. I want to show you something." He led her through the house to a room she hadn't entered before, unlocking it with a key from his pocket. Inside was an office, smaller than his main workspace, with a desk facing windows that overlooked the garden. "This was going to be Isabella's," Dante said quietly. "I built it for her, thinking she'd want space to work on her photography. She never used it. He turned to Amelia. It's yours now, if you want it. A space to figure out what comes next. To build whatever life you want, away from Marcus, away from your family's expectations, away from everyone's opinions about who you should be. Amelia walked to the desk, running her fingers over the smooth wood. I don't know what I want to build. Then figure it out. You have time. He moved toward the door. And Amelia, whatever you decide, whatever you want to become, I'll support it. Not because I'm trying to save you, but because I believe you're worth saving yourself. After he left, Amelia sat at the desk for a long time, looking out at the garden where spring was beginning to assert itself. Flowers pushing through soil, trees budding, the world renewing itself whether anyone was ready or not. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the small swell that was becoming harder to hide. In 3 months, maybe less, she'd be a mother. And she had no idea who that person would be, what kind of life she could offer this child, what kind of world she was bringing them into. But for the first time since leaving Marcus, she felt something other than fear. She felt possibility. The next morning, Amelia called Detective Chen and agreed to full cooperation. She'd testify, provide whatever they needed, help them build an airtight case against Marcus and his father. Not for revenge, though that was a sweet side benefit, but because it was the right thing to do. There's something else, Detective Chen said during their follow-up meeting. We've received threats against you. Anonymous calls suggesting you should refuse to cooperate, implying there could be consequences if you testify. Amelia's blood ran cold. What kind of consequences? The vague kind. It would be unfortunate if something happened to you or your baby. That sort of thing. Wait, Chen's expression was grim. We take these seriously. We can offer witness protection if needed. No. Amelia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I'm not running again. I'm not hiding because someone wants to scare me into silence. Ms. Carter, these threats could be legitimate. Marcus Hale was laundering money for some very dangerous people. If they think you can expose them, I have protection, Amelia said, thinking of Dante's estate, his security team, the weight of his promise. Better protection than witness protection could offer. Chen looked skeptical but didn't push. Just be careful. And if anything happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. When Amelia returned to the estate, she found Dante in his office, surrounded by computer screens and talking rapid-fire Italian into his phone. He held up a finger, wait, and finished the conversation before turning to her. The detective told you about the threats, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you... Because I've already traced 2 of the calls. They came from burner phones registered to associates of the Volkov organization, Russians who were using Marcus to clean their money. His expression was granite. They're not happy about the investigation. Should I be worried? Normally, yes, but they don't know you're here, and they're not going to find out. I've already put additional security in place. No one gets within a mile of this property without us knowing. He paused. But Amelia, this changes things. These aren't idle threats. The Volkovs don't make empty gestures. What are you saying? I'm saying that testifying against Marcus just became significantly more dangerous. Not just for you, but for your baby. He crossed to her, his face serious. I can protect you. We'll protect you. But you need to understand what you're walking into. A war, Amelia said quietly, remembering his words from weeks ago. Yes, a war between federal investigators, the Hale family, and Russian criminals who don't want their money trail exposed. And you're right in the middle of it. So what do I do? Refuse to testify? Let Marcus and his father get away with it? Let the people who threatened my baby walk free? No. You let me handle those Volkovs while you focus on the testimony. Dante's voice was cold, controlled fury. They made a mistake when they threatened you. They don't know who's protecting you, don't understand what they've just started, and by the time they figure it out, it'll be too late. You're going to go after them. I'm going to make it very clear that you're untouchable, that threatening you has consequences they won't survive. He saw her expression, and his tone softened slightly. This is what I do, Amelia. This is the world I live in. The question is whether you can live in it too. She thought about that over the next few days as Dante's people moved through the estate like shadows, as additional security cameras appeared, as she heard him on the phone speaking in languages she didn't understand about things she could only guess at. This was the reality of accepting his protection, not just safe walls and comfortable rooms, but violence simmering beneath the surface, power wielded in ways that existed outside law and conscience. 2 weeks later, the threats stopped. Amelia didn't ask what Dante had done. Didn't want to know the details of how he'd convinced the Volkovs that she wasn't worth pursuing. But the way his knuckles were bruised when he came to dinner one night, the way certain names stopped appearing in his phone calls, told her enough. "It's handled," was all he said. "You can focus on the testimony without looking over your shoulder." And she did. Spent hours with prosecutors, going through documents, explaining timelines, building a case that would put Marcus and his father away for decades. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, forcing her to relive 3 years of willful blindness and examine every moment she'd chosen to trust instead of question. But it was also empowering. For the first time, Amelia wasn't invisible, wasn't background decoration in someone else's story. She was the key witness, the voice that would bring down an empire built on lies and greed. Marcus tried to contact her once through his lawyer, offering a deal. Drop the testimony and he'd make sure she was taken care of financially, ensure the baby never wanted for anything, keep her name out of all future proceedings. "He wants to buy your silence again," Rachel said when she presented the offer. "New package, same manipulation." Amelia read the proposal once, then shredded it. "Tell him no. Tell him I'll see him in court." The preliminary hearing was set for early June. By then, Amelia would be 7 months pregnant, visibly showing, undeniably vulnerable. The optics would work in her favor. The wronged wife, the innocent victim, the mother-to-be standing up to powerful men who'd used her. But as the date approached, Amelia found herself thinking less about the trial and more about what came after. She'd been living in Dante's home for 3 months, had settled into routines, learned the rhythms of his household, found herself looking forward to their evening conversations more than she wanted to admit. He was different than she'd expected. Yes, he was dangerous. She'd seen enough to know the violence he was capable of, the power he wielded without hesitation. But he was also thoughtful, funny in a dry way that caught her off guard, genuinely interested in her opinions about everything from politics to the book she'd started reading again. And he was good with the idea of the baby. Asked about appointments, made sure she had everything she needed, even started reading parenting books when he thought she wasn't looking. "You're going to be a good mother," he said one evening, watching her struggle to reach a book on a high shelf, her growing belly making the stretch awkward. "How do you know?" She accepted his help retrieving the book. "Because you're already fighting for this kid before they're even born. Because you chose them over comfort and safety. Because you're brave enough to build a life from scratch rather than raise them in a beautiful cage." He paused. "That's what good mothers do." "What about good fathers?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Dante was quiet for a moment. "I think good fathers show up. Protect. Provide not just money, but presence. Teach their children that strength isn't about power over others, but about using what you have to protect the people who matter." He looked at her then, something vulnerable in his eyes. "I think good fathers choose their children over everything else." "Your father didn't," Amelia guessed. "My father taught me that family is a business and love is a weakness. He was very successful and very alone when he died." Dante's jaw tightened. "I won't make his mistakes." "You're not planning to have children," Amelia said, though it came out like a question. "I wasn't. Didn't see how I could bring a child into this world, this life. Didn't trust myself not to repeat the patterns." He smiled, but it was sad. "But watching you prepare for this baby, seeing how you're willing to fight for them, it makes me think maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's possible to be both who I am and someone who could be a good father." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Amelia's heart was racing, her mind spinning through possibilities she shouldn't be considering. It was too soon, too complicated, too much. But standing in Dante's library, watching him watch her with something that looked like hope and fear mixed together, she couldn't deny the truth that had been building for weeks. She was falling for him. And judging by the way he looked at her, the way he'd protected her, the way he'd slowly lowered his walls over evening conversations and quiet moments, he was falling for her too. The question was what they were going to do about it. The awareness of her feelings should have made things awkward between them, but somehow it didn't. If anything, the unspoken truth created a kind of charged intimacy that colored every interaction. The way Dante's hand lingered on the small of her back when he guided her through doorways. The way Amelia found excuses to be in whatever room he occupied. The way they both stayed up later than necessary, neither wanting to be the first to end their evening conversations. But neither of them spoke about it. Not directly. because speaking it aloud would demand decisions neither was ready to make. Then Marcus's trial date arrived, and everything else became secondary to survival. The courthouse was a media circus. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, protesters holding signs about corporate corruption and white-collar crime. Dante's security team created a human shield around Amelia as they moved from the car to the entrance, and even then she felt exposed, vulnerable, her pregnant belly visible beneath her simple black dress. Inside, the atmosphere was quieter, but no less tense. Marcus sat at the defense table with 3 expensive lawyers, his father beside him looking older than Amelia remembered. When Marcus saw her, something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or regret. She couldn't tell and didn't care enough to analyze it. "You ready for this?" Rachel whispered beside her. Amelia nodded, though her hands were shaking. "Let's end this." The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Financial records showing millions moved through shell companies. Testimony from accountants who'd been pressured to falsify statements. Email chains where Marcus discussed the need to clean funds and restructure problematic transactions. And through it all, the careful construction of how they'd used Amelia's identity without her knowledge or consent. When it was her turn to testify, Amelia walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like water. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and met Marcus's eyes across the courtroom. For 3 years, she'd been afraid of him. Not physically, Marcus had never raised a hand to her, but afraid of his disapproval, his judgment, his ability to make her feel small with a look or a carefully chosen word. She wasn't afraid anymore. "Ms. Carter," the prosecutor began, "can you describe your knowledge of your ex-husband's business activities during your marriage?" I knew almost nothing. Marcus made it clear that his work was too complex for me to understand, that I should focus on being supportive rather than asking questions. Amelia's voice was steady. "I trusted him. That was my mistake." "Did you ever sign financial documents on his behalf?" "Tax returns, yes. He'd present them during dinner or while I was getting ready for events. When I asked if I should review them first, he said it was unnecessary." "And the offshore accounts opened in your name?" "I had no knowledge of those until Detective Chen informed me of their existence. I never signed documents creating them, never accessed them, never knew they existed." Marcus's lead attorney, a sharp-faced man named Brennan, tried to shake her testimony during cross-examination. "Ms. Carter, isn't it true that you benefited financially from your husband's success? That you lived in a luxury penthouse, wore expensive clothes, enjoyed a lifestyle most people only dream of?" "Yes," Amelia said simply. "And yet you expect this court to believe you never questioned where that money came from?" "I believed it came from his legitimate work as an investment banker. I had no reason to think otherwise until after I'd already filed for divorce." "How convenient. You leave your husband and suddenly you're cooperating with federal investigators. Some might see that as vindictive." "Some might see it as doing the right thing," Amelia countered. "I didn't testify to hurt Marcus. I testified because he committed crimes and used my identity to do it. That's not vindictive. That's justice." Brennan tried several more angles, attempting to paint her as either complicit or opportunistic. But Amelia held firm, answering each question with calm honesty. And when she mentioned her pregnancy, that she'd found out the night of their anniversary, the night Marcus never came home, she saw several jurors' expressions shift. The prosecution rested after 2 weeks of testimony. The defense tried to argue that Marcus had been following his father's instructions, that he was as much a victim of the elder Hale's schemes as anyone. But the evidence was overwhelming, the pattern too clear. On a Friday afternoon in mid-June, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Amelia sat in the gallery between Rachel and Dante, watching as Marcus's face went pale, as his father slumped in his chair, as the judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. Around them, people were reacting, prosecutors congratulating each other, reporters rushing to file their stories, Marcus's mother sobbing dramatically in the front row. But Amelia felt only a vast, echoing emptiness. It was over. The marriage, the trial, the chapter of her life that had almost destroyed her. Marcus would go to prison for 15 to 20 years, his father even longer. The Hale Empire would be dismantled, assets seized, everything they'd built reduced to cautionary tales in business ethics classes. And she was free. "How do you feel?" Dante asked quietly as they made their way through the crowd toward the exit. "I don't know yet," Amelia admitted. "Ask me in a few hours." But a few hours later, back at the estate, The reality hit her like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on the trial, on testifying, on surviving each day, that she hadn't let herself think about what came after. Now, with nothing left to fight, nothing left to prove, she had to face the future she'd been too afraid to imagine. She was 7 months pregnant. Her family had disowned her for refusing to protect Marcus. She had no job, no prospects, no clear path forward. Everything she'd built her adult life around, her marriage, her place in a certain social circle, her parents' approval, had burned to ash. All she had left was a baby she was terrified of failing and feelings for a man whose world she didn't fully understand. The panic attack hit without warning. One moment, Amelia was sitting in the library trying to read. The next, she couldn't breathe, her chest tight, her vision tunneling, her heart racing so fast she thought it might explode. "Amelia!" Dante's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Look at me. Focus on my voice." She tried, but the world was spinning, her lungs refusing to work properly, terror clawing at her throat. "You're safe," Dante said, his hands on her shoulders, solid and real. "You're here, you're safe, and you're going to be okay. Breathe with me. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. Come on, with me now." He counted, his voice steady and calm, and slowly, so slowly, Amelia's breathing evened out. The panic receded like a wave pulling back from shore, leaving her shaking and exhausted in its wake. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I don't know what—" "Don't apologize. You just survived something traumatic. Your body's processing." He guided her to the sofa, keeping one hand on her back. "When did you last eat?" "I don't remember. Breakfast, maybe?" "Elena," Dante called, and the housekeeper appeared as if she'd been waiting. "Can you bring something light? Soup, bread, whatever's easy." After Elena left, Dante sat beside Amelia, close but not touching, just present. "Talk to me. What's going on in your head?" "Everything." The word came out broken. "It's over. The trial, the fighting, all of it. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I'm going to have this baby in 2 months, and I have no plan, no support system except you, and I can't keep imposing on your kindness forever. I need to figure out my life, but I don't even know where to start. So start small. What do you need right now in this moment? To not feel like I'm drowning." "Okay. We can work with that." Dante shifted to face her more fully. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to eat something. Then you're going to rest because you look exhausted. Tomorrow, when your head is clear, we'll start making a plan. But right now, all you need to do is breathe and eat and exist. That's enough." "It doesn't feel like enough." "It is. Trust me." Elena returned with soup and fresh bread, and Dante sat with Amelia while she ate, not talking, just being present. When she finished, he walked her upstairs to her room. "Get some sleep," he said at her door. "Real sleep, not the anxious half-rest you've been getting. I'll have Elena check on you in a few hours." But Amelia didn't want to be alone, didn't want to lie in bed with her thoughts spiraling and no anchor to hold her steady. "Stay," she heard herself say. "Just until I fall asleep, please." Something shifted in Dante's expression. "Amelia, I'm not asking for anything more than company. I can't be alone right now." He hesitated, and she could see the war in his eyes between what he wanted and what he thought was appropriate. But then he nodded, following her into the room and settling into the armchair near the window while she changed into comfortable clothes and climbed into bed. "Tell me something," Amelia said into the darkness. "Something true about you that no one else knows." Dante was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then, "I'm terrified of being my father, of waking up one day and realizing I've built the same cold, transactional life he had, that I've confused power for connection and ended up alone." "You're nothing like that. Amelia searched for the right words. "You're the first person in years who's made me feel seen, who's protected me without demanding anything in return. That's not your father, that's you." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just better at hiding the truth." He paused. "My father died alone in a hospital bed with no one who actually loved him, just business associates paying respects out of obligation. I looked at him and thought, that's what happens when you treat people like assets. But I don't know if I know how to be different. You're doing it right now, being different." Amelia's eyes were heavy, exhaustion pulling her towards sleep. "You could have left me in that restaurant, could have let me figure things out alone. But you didn't. That matters." She didn't hear his response if he made one. Sleep claimed her, deep and dreamless, and when she woke hours later, the room was dark and Dante was gone. But a blanket had been draped over her that hadn't been there before, and on the nightstand was a note in his angular handwriting. "You're stronger than you think. Rest. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Tomorrow became the next week, and the week after that. Slowly, with Dante's help and Rachel's legal expertise, Amelia started building the framework of a new life. She couldn't work in finance, too much stigma, too many questions, but she could teach. Rachel connected her with an adult education program that needed someone to teach basic financial literacy to immigrants and low-income families, people who'd been failed by the same systems that had rewarded Marcus's corruption. The work was humbling, fulfilling in ways Amelia hadn't expected. Her students were hungry for knowledge, grateful for her time, completely unconcerned with her scandal-tainted name. They cared that she could explain compound interest in terms that made sense, that she helped them understand credit scores and savings accounts, and how to avoid predatory lenders. For the first time in her adult life, Amelia felt useful, not decorative, not symbolic, but genuinely valuable. "You're good at this," Dante said one evening, watching her prepare lesson plans at the desk he'd given her. "Teaching, I mean. You light up when you talk about it." "It's different than I expected. I thought teaching would be about having all the answers, but it's really about asking the right questions, helping people figure out what they need to know." She looked up at him. "I think I might actually be good at something." "You're good at a lot of things. You just never had space to discover what they were." The comment stayed with her, settling into the places where self-doubt used to live. She was good at things. Was building a life that didn't require Marcus's money or her parents' approval. Was creating something real and sustainable. But she was also 8 months pregnant, living in a house that wasn't hers, falling deeper every day for a man she wasn't sure she had any right to want. The feelings had become impossible to ignore. The way her heart sped up when Dante entered a room. The way she caught herself watching him when he didn't notice, memorizing the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. The way her body responded to his nearness, even swollen and awkward with pregnancy. And she was pretty sure he felt it too. Caught his gaze lingering on her more than was strictly appropriate. Noticed how he found excuses to touch her. A hand on her back, help standing from low chairs, steadying her when her balance shifted with her changing center of gravity. But neither of them said anything. The timing was wrong, the situation too complicated, the stakes too high. Then Marcus's sentencing happened, and everything changed. 23 years in federal prison. His father got 30. Both men looked broken as the judge delivered the verdict, their expensive lawyers unable to work the miracles they'd promised. Amelia watched from the gallery, Dante beside her, and felt nothing but relief that it was finally, truly over. Outside the courthouse, a reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "Ms. Carter, how does it feel to see your ex-husband sentenced to over 2 decades in prison?" "It feels like justice," Amelia said simply. "For the people he stole from, the clients he betrayed, and the trust he violated. I hope he uses his time to become a better person than he was." "Do you have any regrets about testifying?" "Not even one." "What's next for you?" Amelia looked at Dante, who stood just out of frame, watching her with something like pride in his eyes. "I'm building a life. Teaching, preparing for my baby, moving forward, that's all." But moving forward meant making decisions she'd been avoiding. That night, after they returned to the estate, Amelia sat Dante down in the library. "We need to talk," she said, and watched him tense. "That phrase never precedes good news. It's not bad news. It's just, I need to start figuring out what happens next. After the baby comes, I mean. I can't stay here forever, Dante. This isn't my home, and I can't keep imposing on you." His expression shuddered. "You're not imposing. I've made that clear." "I know, but I need to build something sustainable. Find my own place, create a real life for me and my daughter." She pressed her hand to her stomach where the baby was kicking. "I'm grateful for everything you've done. You saved me, protected me, gave me space to find myself again. But I can't be dependent on your protection forever. That's just trading one cage for another, even if this one is gilded with kindness instead of indifference." Dante stood abruptly, moving to the window. "Is that what you think this is? A cage?" "No, but it could become one if I'm not careful. If I let myself get too comfortable, too dependent, too—" She stopped, not sure how to finish that thought without revealing too much. "To what?" He turned back to face her, and there was something raw in his eyes. "Say it, Amelia." "Too attached," she whispered. "To this house. To this life. To you. The silence that followed was deafening. Dante stared at her, his jaw tight, and Amelia braced herself for rejection. She'd said too much, revealed too much, crossed a line they'd been carefully avoiding. You think you're the only one who's attached? His voice was rough. You think I've just been playing protector, that this has all been about Isabella and redemption and fixing past mistakes? I don't know what to think. You've never said, because I didn't want to pressure you. Didn't want you to feel like staying here came with expectations or obligations. He crossed back to her, dropping to his knees beside her chair the way he had weeks ago. Amelia, I've been falling for you since the night you walked into my restaurant, looking like a drowned angel who'd finally found the courage to choose herself. Every day since then has just made it worse, watching you get stronger, braver, more yourself. Watching you prepare for this baby with love and terror and determination. Watching you build a life from nothing but will and intelligence and heart. Amelia's breath caught. Dante, I love you, he said, the words stark and true. Not because you remind me of Isabella, not because I'm trying to save you, but because you're brilliant and brave and you make me want to be better than I am. Because when you're in a room, everything else fades. Because the idea of you leaving, of not seeing you every day, physically hurts. He paused, his hands gentle on hers. But I also know the timing is terrible. You're 8 months pregnant with another man's child, still recovering from divorce and betrayal, building a new identity. The last thing you need is me adding more complications. What if I want the complication? The words slipped out before Amelia could stop them. What if I've been falling too and just been too afraid to admit it? Hope flared in his eyes, quickly tempered by caution. You don't have to say that. You don't owe me. I'm not saying it because I owe you. I'm saying it because it's true. Amelia touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. I love you, Dante Moretti. And yes, the timing is terrible, and the situation is complicated, and I have no idea how to navigate any of this. But I'm tired of being afraid of wanting things. Tired of making myself small to avoid risk. I want you. I want this, whatever this could be between us. Even if it's messy and scary and completely insane. Your baby will have a mother who loves them and a chance at a life built on truth instead of lies. And maybe, if you want, a man who could show them what it means to choose people over power. Who could teach them that family is about presence, not blood? She paused. But only if you want that. I'm not asking you to be a father to someone else's child. I'm just... Dante kissed her, gently, reverently, like she was something precious and breakable. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. I want everything, he said. You, the baby, a life together. All of it. But Amelia, you need to be sure. Once we do this, once we commit to each other, I'm not the kind of man who does things halfway. I'll protect you both with everything I have, love you with everything I am, but I'll also demand honesty and loyalty and presence. I'll demand that you keep choosing yourself, keep growing, keep being the woman who walked away from comfort to find truth. I can do that, Amelia whispered. Can you promise me something in return? Anything. Promise me you'll keep choosing to be different than your father, that you'll use your power to protect instead of control, that you'll teach our daughter to... She stopped, the word hanging between them, enormous and terrifying and perfect. Teach our daughter that strength is about lifting people up, not keeping them down. Our daughter, Dante repeated, his voice wondering. You said our daughter. If you want her, if you want us. More than I've ever wanted anything. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Amelia felt something fundamental shift in her chest. This was different than what she'd had with Marcus. This was built on truth and choice and mutual respect. This was love that demanded she stay whole instead of breaking herself into manageable pieces. This was real. They talked long into the night, planning a future that seemed impossible and inevitable all at once. Dante would adopt the baby after she was born, give her his name and protection and love. They'd marry, but on Amelia's timeline when she was ready. She'd keep teaching, keep building her own identity. He'd slowly transition his business toward more legitimate ventures, using his resources to help people instead of just accumulating power. What about the parts of your life that aren't legitimate? Amelia asked. The parts that will always exist in gray areas? I'm not going to lie and say I'll become a saint, but I can be selective about who I help and why. Can use my position to protect people who need it instead of just profiting from chaos. He laced his fingers through hers. I can be the man you deserve, Amelia. Not perfect, but better. I don't need perfect. I just need real. 2 weeks later, Amelia went into labor at 3 in the morning. Dante rushed her to the private hospital where her doctor was waiting, stayed by her side through 17 hours of exhausting, terrifying, transcendent work. And when the nurse finally placed a tiny, screaming, perfect baby girl in Amelia's arms, Dante looked at both of them with such naked love that Amelia started crying. "She's beautiful," he whispered, touching the baby's impossibly small hand. "She's perfect." "She needs a name," Amelia said, exhausted and euphoric and completely in love with this tiny human she'd created. "What about hope?" Dante suggested. "Because that's what she represents. Hope that we can be better than our pasts. Hope that love wins over fear. Hope for a future neither of us thought we'd have." "Hope Moretti," Amelia tested. "I like it." "Hope Carter Moretti," Dante corrected. "She should have both names, her mother's strength and her father's protection." Father. He'd said it so naturally, with such certainty that Amelia knew he meant it. This man who'd saved her from drowning was going to raise her daughter as his own, love her unconditionally, give her everything Marcus never could have. In the weeks that followed, as Amelia recovered and learned to navigate the exhausting, beautiful chaos of new motherhood, the last pieces of her old life finally released their hold. Her parents sent a brief, formal note acknowledging Hope's birth, but making no move toward reconciliation. Old friends from her marriage stayed silent. The social circle that had once defined her continued as if she'd never existed. And Amelia found she didn't care. The life she was building with Dante and Hope was richer, realer, more hers than anything she'd had before. Teaching gave her purpose. Motherhood gave her joy. And love, real, complicated, chosen love, gave her everything else. On a quiet evening when Hope was 6 weeks old, Dante asked Amelia to marry him. Not with grand gestures or public displays, just the two of them in the library where they'd had so many conversations, Hope sleeping peacefully in her bassinet nearby. "I know it's fast," he said, the ring box open in his hands. "I know you might want to wait, but I also know I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again. So, will you marry me? Build a family with me? Trust me with your heart?" Amelia looked at the ring, simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious diamond Marcus had chosen, and felt certain. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times yet. They married 2 months later in Dante's garden, just family and close friends. Elena cried. Rachel gave a toast about second chances and courage. And when Dante kissed his bride while Hope gurgled happily in her grandmother Elena's arms, Amelia felt the final weight of her past dissolve. She'd walked into a restaurant on her lowest night, broken and pregnant and desperate. She was walking out of the ceremony whole, loved, and surrounded by people who chose her every single day. The anniversary that broke everything had actually saved her. And the stranger who'd offered her a card with just a phone number had given her a life worth living. Marriage to Dante was nothing like marriage to Marcus had been. Where Marcus had demanded she shrink, Dante encouraged her to expand. Where Marcus had needed her silence, Dante craved her voice. Where Marcus had made her invisible, Dante saw her completely. Every flaw, every strength, every complicated piece of who she was, and loved her anyway. But loving Dante also meant understanding the full scope of what his protection had cost. 3 months after their wedding, on a crisp October morning, when Hope was learning to roll over and Amelia was preparing for a new semester of teaching, Rachel arrived at the estate unannounced. The lawyer's expression was grim, and she asked to speak to both Amelia and Dante privately. "The Volkov investigation just went public," Rachel said once they were settled in Dante's office. "Federal prosecutors are charging 7 members of the organization with everything from money laundering to attempted murder. And your names are both mentioned in the filings." Amelia's stomach dropped. "Mentioned how?" "As protected witnesses. Apparently Dante provided testimony and evidence that helped build the case against them." Rachel's eyes moved to Dante. "Evidence you didn't tell me you were gathering." "Because I didn't want it traced back to here," Dante said calmly. "The Volkovs threatened Amelia and Hope. I made sure they couldn't follow through. What happens to them after that isn't my concern." "Except now it is, because they're claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. That you coerced witnesses, tampered with documents, essentially ran your own parallel investigation outside legal channels." Rachel's voice was sharp. "They're trying to get the case thrown out, and they're using your involvement to do it. Let them try. Dante's expression was cold. The evidence speaks for itself. How it was obtained is irrelevant if it's accurate. That's not how the law works, and you know it. Rachel turned to Amelia. This could blow back on both of you. If the defense can prove Dante used illegal methods, it could compromise your testimony against Marcus, potentially create grounds for appeal. The implications settled over Amelia like ice water. Marcus could get out? It's a long shot, but his lawyers are already filing motions. They're arguing that if Dante was involved in gathering evidence against the Volkovs, and that evidence was obtained illegally, it calls into question his involvement in your case. They're painting him as someone who manipulates legal proceedings for personal gain. That's insane, Amelia said. Dante didn't manipulate anything. He protected me from people who wanted to hurt me and my daughter. I know that, you know that, but the optics are terrible. Rachel pulled out a folder thick with legal documents. Marcus's attorneys are requesting a hearing. They want to examine Dante's role in your decision to testify, the timeline of when you moved into this house, whether he provided you with information about Marcus's business dealings that you couldn't have known otherwise. Dante stood, pacing to the window. They're desperate, trying anything to create reasonable doubt, and it might work. You're not exactly a character witness anyone wants on the stand. Your reputation, your business, your history, all of it makes you an easy target. Rachel's tone was gentle but firm. I need to know everything, Dante. Every way you were involved in Amelia's case, every piece of evidence you touched, every conversation you had with prosecutors. If there's something that can hurt us, I need to know now. I never touched her testimony, Dante said. Never coached her, never told her what to say. I provided her with protection and a place to stay while she cooperated with federal investigators of her own free will. That's all. What about the financial evidence? The records that showed Marcus was laundering money? I had my people look into his business practices, found irregularities, passed that information along to the appropriate authorities through channels that kept my name out of it. He paused. Or so I thought. Someone talked, Rachel said. Someone in your organization or someone in the prosecutor's office. Either way, the connection is public now, and we need to deal with it. Over the next week, the media picked up the story and ran with it. Headlines screamed about mob connections to high-profile financial crimes case. Talking heads on news programs debated whether Amelia had been a victim or a willing participant in Dante's schemes. Old photos of her with Marcus were juxtaposed with recent images of her leaving the estate, creating a narrative of a woman who'd traded one powerful man for another. They're making me look like a gold digger, Amelia said, reading the coverage on her laptop while Hope napped. Like I left Marcus for you because you could offer more protection, more power. People always need a simple story, Dante said, reading over her shoulder. Complicated truth doesn't fit in headlines. But this could destroy everything. Your reputation, my credibility, the case against Marcus. She closed the laptop, unable to read more. Maybe I should talk to Rachel about separation, create distance between us until this blows over. No. The word was sharp, absolute. We don't run from this. We don't let them turn our relationship into something dirty or transactional. Then what do? We tell the truth, all of it, on our terms, before they can twist it further. 2 days later, Dante and Amelia sat for an exclusive interview with a journalist Rachel trusted. The conversation was recorded in their library, Hope playing on a blanket nearby, and they answered every question with unflinching honesty. How did you meet? The journalist asked. Amelia told the story, the missed anniversary, the rain, walking into Valentino's broken and pregnant and desperate. He saw me when I'd spent months feeling invisible, offered help without asking for anything in return. And you moved in here immediately? Not immediately. That night he gave me a phone number and told me to call when I was ready to stop being invisible. I called after Marcus made it clear he wanted me to end my pregnancy. She looked at Dante. Moving here wasn't about romance. It was about survival. When did it become about romance? Gradually, Dante said, over months of conversations and shared meals and watching Amelia become the person she was always meant to be. I didn't plan to fall in love with her, but how could I not? Some people say this relationship is transactional, that Ms. Carter needed protection and you needed what? Redemption? People can say whatever they want, Amelia said firmly. I know what this relationship is. It's built on honesty, respect, and choice. Dante never asked me to testify against Marcus, never pressured me to cooperate with investigators. He provided a safe place for me to make my own decisions. But he did investigate Marcus independently? I looked into whether the man who'd hurt Amelia posed a continued threat, Dante said carefully. What I found suggested criminal activity. I passed that information to authorities because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted to punish Marcus for being a terrible husband. And the Volkov organization? Threatened my wife and unborn child. I made sure those threats were neutralized. If that involved gathering evidence of their criminal enterprises, so be it. I'd do it again. The interview aired 2 days later, and the response was immediate and divided. Some people saw it as a love story, two broken people finding each other and building something real. Others saw it as confirmation of their worst suspicions, proof that Dante had orchestrated everything from the beginning. The hearing to examine his involvement in Amelia's case was scheduled for November. "This is my fault," Amelia said the night before the hearing, watching Dante pack his briefcase with documents Rachel had requested. "If I hadn't testified, if I just let Marcus get away with it, then he'd still be stealing from people, and you'd still be wondering if you did the right thing." Dante crossed to where she sat on their bed, Hope asleep in the bassinet beside her. "We don't get to control how other people interpret our choices. All we can do is make sure we're making them for the right reasons. What if the judge rules against us? What if Marcus gets a new trial? Then we fight that too. But Amelia, look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "Whatever happens tomorrow, nothing changes the fact that we chose each other, that Hope has two parents who love her, that you're building a life that matters. Marcus can't take that away, no matter what his lawyers argue." The hearing was brutal. Marcus's defense team painted Dante as a criminal mastermind who'd manipulated a vulnerable woman into destroying her husband for personal gain. They implied Amelia had known about the offshore accounts all along, that she'd worked with Dante to frame Marcus, that her pregnancy was a convenient excuse to create sympathy. "Isn't it true," Brennan asked Amelia on the stand, "that you moved in with Mr. Moretti the same night you claimed to have discovered your pregnancy, before you'd even told your husband?" "Yes, and isn't it true that Mr. Moretti had already begun investigating your husband's business before you even met?" "I don't know when he started investigating. I only know he offered me safety when I needed it." "How convenient. A powerful man with the resources to destroy your husband just happens to be there the exact night you decide to leave. You don't find that suspicious?" "I find it fortunate," Amelia said steadily. "I was in crisis, and someone helped me. That's what good people do." "Good people or people with agendas?" Rachel objected, and the judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The implication hung in the air, that everything had been orchestrated, that Amelia and Dante had conspired against Marcus from the beginning. When Dante took the stand, Brennan went after him even harder. "Mr. Moretti, you have a documented history of operating outside legal boundaries. Why should this court believe your involvement in this case was altruistic?" "Because I have nothing to gain from Marcus Hale going to prison," Dante said. "I'm not competing for his business, not trying to take over his territory, not settling some personal vendetta. I helped his ex-wife because she needed help, and I was in a position to provide it." "And the evidence you gathered against him? The financial records that formed the basis of the prosecution's case?" "I didn't gather evidence against him specifically. I investigated whether he posed a threat to Amelia and discovered evidence of broader criminal activity. What prosecutors chose to do with that information was their decision, not mine." "Very convenient how you can distance yourself from the consequences of your actions." "I don't distance myself from anything. I take full responsibility for protecting my family. If that means Marcus Hale and his father face consequences for their crimes, that's justice, not conspiracy." The hearing lasted 3 days. At the end, the judge took the matter under advisement, saying he'd issue a ruling within 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of Amelia's life. She tried to focus on hope, on teaching, on the life they were building, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. What if the judge ruled that Dante's involvement had tainted the case? What if Marcus got a new trial, or worse, got out? "I can't stop thinking about what happens if we lose," she told Dante one night after putting Hope to bed. "Then we adapt. We've done it before." "It's not that simple. If Marcus gets out, if he's vindicated, he could come after Hope, claim parental rights, argue that you manipulated me into keeping her from him." He signed away those rights in the divorce settlement, which his lawyers could argue was signed under duress. They could paint it all as part of your manipulation. That you isolated me from my family, convinced me to testify, made me dependent on you. Her voice was rising, panic creeping in. They could take her, Dante. They could take our daughter. They won't. He pulled her into his arms, solid and certain. Because she's ours, legally and in every way that matters. Marcus signed the adoption papers. My name is on her birth certificate, and no court is going to give custody to a convicted felon serving 23 years. Unless he's not a convicted felon anymore, unless the conviction gets overturned. It won't. Trust me, Amelia. Trust that we did the right thing, and the truth will hold. The judge's ruling came on a Wednesday afternoon. Rachel called with the news, her voice carefully neutral. He denied Marcus's motion for a new trial, said that while Dante's involvement raised questions about methods, the evidence itself was sound and independently verified by federal investigators. Marcus's conviction stands. Amelia sagged against the kitchen counter, relief flooding through her so intensely she felt dizzy. It's over? Really over? Not completely. Marcus's team can appeal the ruling, and they probably will. But this was their best shot, and they missed. The chances of a successful appeal get slimmer from here. After she hung up, Amelia found Dante in his office and threw her arms around him. We won. The conviction stands. He held her tight, and she felt the tension drain from his body. I told you to trust. I'm sorry I doubted. You didn't doubt. You were protecting Hope. That's what mothers do. He pulled back to look at her. But Amelia, we need to talk about what this means going forward. The hearing put a spotlight on my business, my methods, my past. There will be more scrutiny, more questions. I need to know if you're prepared for that. I married you knowing who you are. That doesn't change because people are asking questions. It might change how you're perceived. Teaching positions, social circles, normal middle-class life, all of that becomes harder when you're married to someone like me. Amelia thought about that, about the life she'd imagined for herself before Marcus, before Dante, before everything changed. The safe, respectable existence of a teacher married to a banker, raising children in the suburbs, joining the PTA and attending school fundraisers. That life had never really been hers. It had been a performance, a carefully constructed facade that required her to be smaller, quieter, less. I don't want normal, she said. I want real. I want to teach because I love it, not because it looks respectable. I want to raise Hope to be brave instead of acceptable. And I want to be married to a man who sees me, even when seeing me is complicated. It's going to get more complicated, Dante warned. The Volkov case goes to trial next month. My testimony will be public. Everything I did to protect you, to neutralize their threats, it's all going to come out. Then we face it together. And they did. When the Volkov trial began in December, Dante testified about the threats made against Amelia and Hope, about the evidence he'd gathered showing the organization's money laundering operations, about the steps he'd taken to ensure his family's safety. The defense tried to paint him as a vigilante, someone who'd taken the law into his own hands. I did what any father would do, Dante said simply. Protected my child from people who wanted to hurt her. By gathering evidence illegally? By intimidating witnesses? By using resources available to me to make sure credible threats were neutralized. Whether that happened through legal channels or not is less important to me than knowing my daughter is safe. The honesty was shocking, almost reckless, but it was also completely Dante, refusing to hide behind legal technicalities, owning his choices even when they existed in moral gray areas. The Volkov organization was convicted on multiple counts. Their operation was dismantled, their leadership facing life sentences. And while Dante's testimony had been crucial, prosecutors made it clear he was a witness, not a co-conspirator. The case closed without charges against him. Christmas that year was quiet, intimate. Just Dante, Amelia, Hope, and Elena, who'd become more family than employee. They exchanged simple gifts, ate too much food, and watched Hope's eyes go wide at the lights on the tree. I never thought I'd have this, Amelia said that night, Hope asleep in her arms, Dante beside her on the sofa. A real family. A home that feels like mine. Love that doesn't require me to disappear. You always deserved this. You just had to find the courage to choose it. We chose it, she corrected. Together. The new year brought new challenges and new victories. Amelia's teaching program expanded, and she was asked to develop curriculum for financial literacy courses in 3 additional community centers. The work was demanding but fulfilling, giving her a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with who she was married to or what her last name had been. Dante, true to his word, began slowly transitioning his business toward more legitimate ventures. He wouldn't completely abandon the networks and resources that had built his power. But he became more selective, using his influence to protect people who needed it rather than simply profit from chaos. "I'm building something for Hope," he explained one evening, showing Amelia plans for a foundation that would provide legal defense and support for victims of financial crimes, so that when she's old enough to understand what I do, she can see I used what I had to help people, not just control them. "See, she's going to be so proud of you," Amelia said, studying the detailed plans. "I already am." On Hope's first birthday, they threw a party in the garden where Dante and Amelia had married. Friends from Amelia's teaching program mingled with members of Dante's organization who'd become protective of the little girl who'd somehow made their boss softer. Elena baked a massive cake. Hope smashed her face into it with gleeful abandon. Watching her daughter laugh, covered in frosting, surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally, Amelia felt the final ghost of her old life release its hold. She'd spent so long being afraid of judgment, afraid of failure, afraid of choosing wrong. But standing in Dante's garden, holding the hand of a man who'd helped her remember how to be brave, she finally understood what freedom felt like. It felt like this, messy and imperfect and absolutely real. A few weeks after Hope's birthday, Amelia received an unexpected letter. The return address was a federal prison in Pennsylvania where Marcus was serving his sentence. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Amelia, I don't expect forgiveness or even a response. But I needed to tell you that you were right to leave, right to testify, right to choose yourself over a marriage that was destroying both of us. I was a terrible husband, selfish, arrogant, blind to everything except my own ambition. I don't blame you for what happened. I blame myself. I hope you're happy. I hope your daughter grows up knowing she's loved, and I hope someday you can believe that some part of me is genuinely sorry for the pain I caused. Marcus." Amelia read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation or hidden agenda. But it seemed genuine, a moment of clarity from a man who'd lost everything and finally understood why. "What are you going to do with it?" Dante asked, reading over her shoulder. "Keep it, I think, as a reminder that people can change, even when it's too late to fix what they broke." She folded the letter carefully. "And maybe, eventually, I'll write back. Not to forgive him. I'm not ready for that. Might never be. But to acknowledge that he's trying to be better. That matters, even if it doesn't undo the past. You're more generous than he deserves. Maybe, but I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for me, to prove that I can acknowledge his humanity without letting it diminish my own." Spring came early that year, bringing warmth and renewal. Hope took her first steps in April, walking from Dante to Amelia with determined, wobbly confidence. She said her first word, "Mama," a week later, and Dante pretended not to be jealous, even though his daughter clearly preferred her mother. "Give her time," Amelia laughed, watching Dante try to coax Hope to say Papa with increasingly elaborate bribes. "She'll get there." She did eventually, and when Hope finally said Papa for the first time, looking right at Dante with complete trust and love, he cried. Actual tears streaming down the face of a man who'd built an empire on appearing invulnerable. "I'm allowed to be emotional," he said defensively when Amelia teased him about it later. "My daughter just claimed me." "She claimed you the day you signed the adoption papers," Amelia said. "The day you promised to love her as your own." The words were just her catching up. By the time Hope was 18 months old, the media attention had finally died down. New scandals replaced old ones, and Amelia's name stopped appearing in headlines. She and Dante settled into something resembling normal life. If normal included security teams and occasional visits from people whose business Dante handled in ways Amelia tried not to examine too closely. But the foundation of their relationship, honesty, respect, choice, remained solid. When disagreements arose, they talked through them. When external pressures mounted, they faced them together. When Hope needed something, they both showed up. One evening in early summer, Dante found Amelia in the garden where Hope was chasing butterflies with more enthusiasm than success. "I have something to show you," he said, holding out a folder. Inside were architectural plans for a community center, not just any center, but one specifically designed for teaching financial literacy, providing legal aid, and offering support services for people escaping abusive relationships. "I bought the building last month," Dante said. "Been working with Rachel and some of your colleagues to design programming. It's going to be called the Hope Carter Moretti Center for Financial Justice and Family Support." Amelia stared at the plans, her eyes filling with tears. Dante, I don't know what to say. Say you'll run it. Say you'll take everything you've learned about helping people understand money and power and choice and build something bigger. Something that helps hundreds of people instead of dozens. This must have cost a fortune. Money I made off people's desperation and fear. Seems right to turn it into something that actually helps people instead of exploiting them. He pulled her close. You taught me that power isn't about control. It's about creating opportunities for other people to find their own strength. This is me learning that lesson. The center opened in October, just after Hope's second birthday. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was attended by local politicians, community leaders, and dozens of people whose lives had been touched by Amelia's teaching or Dante's quiet support. Amelia gave a speech about second chances and the courage it takes to choose yourself. Dante stood beside her, holding Hope, and let his wife have the spotlight she'd earned. As autumn settled into winter and Hope learned to speak in full sentences, Amelia sometimes thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. The invisible wife waiting in an empty penthouse, pregnant and terrified, convinced she had no options. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone Amelia had been, but no longer was. She'd burned that life down and built something better from the ashes, a career that mattered, a marriage built on truth, a daughter who would grow up knowing she was wanted and loved and free to be herself. On their second wedding anniversary, Dante surprised Amelia with reservations at Valentino's, the restaurant where they'd met, where everything had changed. I thought it might be nice to go back to where it started, he said, helping her into her coat. Close the circle. The restaurant looked exactly the same. Same warm lighting, same candles on tables, same sense of intimate sanctuary. The hostess, Sophia, who remembered them, seated them at the corner table where they'd sat that rainy night. It feels different, Amelia said, looking around. Or maybe I'm different. Both, Dante said. The last time you were here, you were running from something. Tonight, you're choosing something. Over dinner, they talked about Hope's latest antics, about the center's growing programs, about plans for the future. Easy conversation, comfortable silences, the kind of intimate knowledge that comes from building a life together. Do you ever regret it? Amelia asked over dessert. Taking me in, protecting me, tying yourself to all my complications? Never. Not for a second. Dante reached across the table, taking her hand. You're the best decision I ever made, Amelia. You and Hope both. You taught me that power is meaningless if you're not using it to protect something worth protecting. We taught each other, Amelia corrected. You showed me how to be brave, how to choose myself, how to exist loudly instead of quietly disappearing. On the drive home, Hope asleep in her car seat, Amelia looked at the city lights and thought about destiny. She'd walked into a restaurant on the worst night of her life and found salvation in the form of a dangerous stranger who saw her when she'd forgotten how to see herself. The odds of that happening, of everything lining up exactly right, seemed impossible. But maybe that was the point. Maybe miracles weren't about probability, but about choice. About having the courage to call a phone number when every instinct said to stay in the familiar cage. About trusting that help could come without strings attached. About believing you deserved more than scraps disguised as love. 3 years ago, Amelia had been dying slowly in a marriage that required her erasure. Today, she was thriving in a life built on her own terms, raising a daughter who would never have to choose between love and self. Married to a man who demanded she stay whole. The pregnancy test with 2 pink lines had changed everything. But it hadn't saved her. She'd saved herself. Dante had just given her the space and safety to do it. And hope, beautiful, fierce, perfect hope, was the proof that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings. That courage is contagious. That love, when it's real, demands you be yourself instead of a carefully edited version designed to please others. As they pulled through the gates of the estate, home, their home, the place where they'd built something real and messy and true, Amelia felt complete. Not because her life was perfect or her past was erased, but because she'd stopped waiting for permission to exist. She'd claimed her life, her choices, her power, and she'd used all of it to build something worth protecting. The little girl in the back seat, the man beside her, the work that gave her purpose, the love that demanded she stay brave. This was what freedom looked like. Not an ending, but a beginning that never stopped unfolding.